folks. We are back here on WLTH 1370 AM. I am Scott Cannon, and over there is Reverend Delwyn Campbell.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, we're going to talk about email.
Yes,
I like getting emails. Don't you like getting emails?
I do. But one person who might be regretting some of the emails he sent is Dr. Anthony Fauci. I mean, last week we did the segment about the possible origins of COVID and how basically the medical establishment, the media, and our politicians sort of conspired to keep us from being able to explore the theory of a lab leak more in depth.
Yeah.
And not because that's necessarily 100%. We're 100% sure of how the virus existed. We're not sure that it was made in a lab. We're not sure. We're not 100% sure. Nobody's claiming that they have a smoking gun yet. But because our government, led by Dr. Fauci, funded a lot of the gain of function experiments in China, it's a possibility. And now we're hearing that workers at that Wuhan lab were some of the first people to get sick from COVID-like symptoms. Well, this week, the Washington Post and BuzzFeed News collectively published thousands of emails from the White House medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci's inbox spanning from January to June of 2020. The correspondence provides some insights into his day-to-day during the height of the pandemic. Early Fauci emails from February 2020 are about gain-of-function experiments abroad. Now, he went back and forth with Rand Paul not too long ago, who is a senator from Kentucky, and
Senator Paul,
constantly called him out.
Dr. Fauci, we don't know whether the pandemic started in a lab in Wuhan or evolved naturally, but we should want to know. 3 million people have died from this pandemic, and that should cause us to explore all possibilities. Instead, government authorities, self-interested in continuing gain-of-function research, say there's nothing to see here. Gain-of-function research, as you know, is juicing up naturally occurring animal viruses to infect humans. To arrive at the truth, the U.S. government should admit that the Wuhan Virology Institute was experimenting to enhance the coronavirus's ability to infect humans. Juicing up super viruses is not new. Scientists in the U.S. have long known how to mutate animal viruses to infect humans. For years, Dr. Ralph Barrick, a virologist in the U.S., has been collaborating with Dr. Shi Zhengli of the Wuhan Virology Institute, sharing his discoveries about how to create super viruses. This gain-of-function research has been funded by the NIH. The collaboration between the U.S. and the Wuhan Virology Institute continues. Doctors Barrick and Shi worked together to insert bat virus spike protein into the backbone of the deadly SARS virus, and then use this man-made supervirus to infect human airway cells. Think about that for a moment. The SARS virus had a 15% mortality. We're fighting a pandemic that has about a 1% mortality. Can you imagine if a SARS virus that's been juiced up and had viral proteins added to it, to the spike protein, if that were released accidentally? Dr. Fauci, do you still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain of function research in the Wuhan Institute.
Do they fund
of
Dr.
Virology.
Barrick?
We do not fund.
Do you fund Dr. Barrick's gain of function research?
Dr. Barrett does not doing gain of function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina.
You don't think inserting
China.
a bat virus spike protein that he got from the Wuhan Institute into the SARS virus is gain of function?
That is
you would
not
be in the minority, because at least 200 scientists have signed a statement from the Cambridge Working Group saying that it is gain of function.
Well, it is not.
And he's just blatantly lying at this point, because as we talked about last week in the origin of COVID, article from the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, the NIH with Peter. I want to get his name correctly here. Peter Daszak. What we talked about last week, a zoologist whose nonprofit steered U.S. funding to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, personally thanked Dr. Anthony Fauci for pushing back on the theory that the coronavirus leaked from a lab in an April 2020 email published as part of this Freedom of Information request. As to remind you again, as we talked about last week, Daszak's organization, the Eco Health Alliance, funneled $3.4 million in grants from the National Institute of Health to the Wuhan Institute of Virology to study bat coronaviruses between 2014 and 2019, while politicians and scientists in the U.S. have suggested that the novel coronavirus initially leaked from Wuhan Institute of Technology before spreading across the globe. Now, obviously, Mr. Daszak has denied this allegation. Also, in the emails, we see that Dr. Fauci was warned that coronavirus was possibly engineered in a lab before the pandemic even started. He seemed to be taking it seriously behind closed doors while he was downplaying the public. On January 31st, Christian G. Anderson, the director of Scripps Research Institute, wrote to Dr. Fauci to say that some of the SARS-CoV-2 features look engineered. Also, in the emails, Dr. Fauci says that store-bought masks are not really effective. In February of 2020, obviously, we played before where he talked about not wearing masks.
There's a lot of confusion among people and misinformation surrounding face masks.
Yeah,
Can you discuss that?
The masks are important for someone who's infected to prevent them from infecting someone else. Now, when you see people and look at the films in China and South Korea, whatever, everybody's wearing a mask. Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
You're sure of it? Because people are listening really
No.
closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face.
And can you get some schmutz sort of staying inside there?
Of course, of course.
Again, lies, as he admitted later on in the summer of 2020 that he was just saying that so that people would not run out and buy masks, and to keep. He wanted to be able to make sure that medical workers were able to get masks. So that's what he said. So, and the excuse he used was that, well, we have no idea of knowing that outside of a medical setting that a mask would work. And I'm like, that'd be like a police officer saying, well, we have no idea that bulletproof vests would work outside of, outside of a police station or
outside
something.
Outside of the range.
Yeah, outside. And that's what I mean. Like, seriously, one thing I did find funny about the emails was that Dr. Fauci is very uncomfortable with people's fascination with him. This comes from, once again, the corporate liberal media. He became the figure of much public attention and enjoyed a popular image that led to articles, memes, and even merchandise. He was not comfortable with the attention. A colleague at the NIH, which funded all that research of bat coronaviruses in Wuhan, sent him a link to the Washington Post article headline, Fauci Socks, Fauci Donuts, and Fauci Fan Art. The coronavirus expert attracts a cult following. All he did was say that he wanted it to stop. Later, Fauci sent an article from a Google News alert in an email headline, Cuomo Crush and Fauci Fever. The sexualization of these men is a real thing on the internet. So
Wow.
that was at least he saw how bizarre the media was being, and also about Cuomo, who we haven't talked about him because obviously we're not in New York City, and what he's doing doesn't really affect us that much. But the media also pushed him, even though he's a liar who helped kill a bunch of innocent elderly people by putting COVID patients in nursing homes. And don't forget, the media liked him just because he hated Trump. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you need, is to be able to hate Trump. If you hate Trump, you can kill as many old people as you want. The guy's out sexually harassing women and groping women. They say they hate Trump because he treats women bad, but then they support Fauci. Then they support Cuomo and Joe Biden, who both have made a career out of grabbing women and making them uncomfortable. So it just goes to show you once again, you cannot trust the mainstream corporate media. That's why I take what we do here, Rev, extremely seriously. A lot of people are like, oh, you're just on in Gary, Indiana. Well, we're right next to Chicago, the third biggest city in America. Okay, and the people in the city of Gary deserve to know, and in this area, Lake County.
That's right.
And let me just say this: we put an antenna, a much larger antenna, up I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and let me tell you, WLTH is clear. You can listen to us clear in the entire region now. A lot of people, including myself, didn't used to like to listen to WLTH in the car once you got outside of the Gary city limits. Now you can hear us clear. So now you can hear me clear, make fun of, and talk about and make fun of the corporate mainstream media. Now, ultimately, let me just say this before we get rid of this clown, that I had to actually go to the Australian, which is as it says in its name, an Australian news network, to find that he actually backed the gain of function experiments despite the pandemic risk. He argued that the experimenting on contagious viruses, manipulating and heightening their infectious potency was worth the risk in a laboratory. He supported the contentious gain of function experiments that some now fear, and called them important work. Now, this was back in 2012. He acknowledged the controversial scientific research could spark a pandemic. He said it's unlikely, but in a conceivable turn of events, what if a scientist becomes infected with the virus, which leads to an outbreak and ultimately triggers a pandemic? So, look, like I tell you guys here, do your research for yourself. You can find all this stuff, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist. They do the Doomsday Clock. They're not weirdos. The Guardian. There's a lot of different news sources out there if you really want to learn, but you are not going to learn much from the corporate mainstream media that's owned by a few billionaires. Bill K talks about it every week when he calls up about we just had he just brought up a few weeks ago, how the Post Tribune has sold to Aldine Capital, which is a hedge fund in New York City. And so, even the Post Tribune, I'm looking sideways at the Post Tribune and have for a long time now. So just basically, everybody stay vigilant, stay informed. Do not depend on the corporate mainstream media, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, CNN, MSNBC. These corporate institutions, they don't have the interest of the people in mind. That's why they're still propping up Dr. Fauci.
Mm-hmm. But you're right. I mean, this is a situation where, and it also relates to the whole issue about social media policing information.
Yep.
Because social media, which is accountable to none of us, and even if you, in fact, wasn't at that one point when, and I was no fan of those people on the right that were doing this, but when they felt like, they were getting shut down on Facebook, and so they went over to, was it Parler?
Yeah.
And then Google said, well, we're not going to allow you to operate, and there was nothing that people could do about it. Right. There was nothing that company could do about it. And if you don't have access to the internet, it doesn't matter how good your app is.
Yep.
If they won't carry it,
Right.
and who polices these unofficial police?
Right. We just came down a few hours ago that Donald Trump has been officially banned by Facebook for 2 years. This is the former president of the United States.
Yeah.
You know, and so many people that annoyed me, a lot of people on the left, a lot of black people, a lot of like, oh yeah, this is great. We got to get him out. And it's like, dude, the minute they can do that to Donald Trump, what do you think they can do to Black Lives Matter, or not even Black Lives Matter, because they're so in bed with the corporate state, but real black activists. They banned Farrakhan not too long ago. They banned countless other black people who maybe weren't approved by the establishment,
Yeah.
liberal elite. And so, we have to be vigilant about this type of stuff and not just say, well, I don't like Trump, so it's okay when they tell him he can't say what he wants to say on social media, because they're gonna do that to you next.
Yeah. Because you've got a whole lot less influence that you can peddle than somebody like a Trump does.
Exactly.
Him not being able to get on Facebook, that didn't affect him in any significant way.
Not really, no.
But for some of us out there who get all of their news and information from Facebook, don't clap.
Yeah. Yeah. You're next.
Think what they can do to you, and there's not a thing you can do about it.
Right. Absolutely.